أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Assalamu alaikum all, welcome to lesson 2 of our classical Arabic for the Holy Qur'an online lecture series. So hopefully you've reviewed lesson 1 and you've understood the concepts there and you've tried the exercises and ready to move on to lesson 2. Now in this lesson we're going to be looking at a few different phrases. The adjectival phrase or the al-Mawsuf or Sifa, prepositions or harf al-jar, and the prepositional phrase jar wa majroor. So an overview of this lesson, as mentioned, we'll be looking at a few different phrases. The first will be the adjectival or descriptive phrase known as al-Mawsuf wa Sifa, and also commonly known as al-Murakkab al-Tawsifi. We'll be looking at prepositions, huruf al-jar, and the prepositional phrase, jarun wa majroor. So I'll begin inshallah. So before we begin, we need to understand what a phrase or a word construction is in the Arabic language. So a word construction or phrase, murakkab or murakkibat, as for the plural, is composed of two or more words that join together to form a single unit within a sentence. So in other words, a phrase is when you have a couple of words or more joining together, and even though they are two separate words, they function as one single unit within that sentence, or they can't be separated from each other, in other words. So let's look at the classification of phrases. If you remember previously, we looked at how the word was classified, the kalimah, in the first lesson. But now we're going to look at how the grammarians have classified the murakkab, or the phrase. So I have here at the top, al-murakkab is divided into two categories. Now the first one here, I've got kalamun tam. Now this is, you can say, a complete phrase. In other words, it's a complete words or complete wordings. Now this is obviously in other words, a complete sentence. So we're not going to be focusing on here at the moment. We're going to be focusing on this side here, kalamun naqis, which in other words are words that are incomplete or broken. So these are the phrases that we're going to be looking at for the next few lessons. And some examples of these common phrases in Arabic or murakkibat is al-idafa, al-jar wa majroor, which is what we're going to look at today, and al-mawsuf wa sifa, which is another one we're going to look at today. This one we'll look at a bit later on. So there are certain common phrases, and there are obviously a lot more than these three. These aren't the only three. And it's very essential not just to understand how words work in Arabic, the kalimat, but also to understand how phrases work, because they function as single units within sentences. So you can have a sentence with a mixture of single words with different kalimah, or you can have in that same sentence a mixture of words together with phrases, all working together to form one complete sentence of information. So let's start with the Mawsuf Sifa phrase. If we look in the Quran, in this verse here, we can focus on this last part here. The ayah says, Kitabun Karimun. So this here is a Mawsuf Sifa phrase, and we're going to get into the details of what makes it a Mawsuf Sifa phrase, because obviously every single phrase has its telltale signs and indications to tell you it's that certain phrase. And when you're constructing a phrase of the same nature, you need to follow those same rules. So here we have Kitabun Karimun. Now before I get into the grammar, we know what the meanings of these words should be. So Kitabun means a book. And if we recall from last lesson, we're saying here a book, meaning indefinite, because of this tanween here. The tanween here tells us straight away that this is indefinite, an indefinite noun. So the term for indefinite was nakira, if you remember, as opposed to ma'rifa, which was definite, which is why we translate it as a book. We know that these are nouns straight off the bat. It's from the ism category because we have a tanween. That's another reason. Only nouns, or only the asma, can take tanween. You can't have a verb taking a tanween. So as soon as you see a tanween on a word, you know it's from the ism category. We also know the jins of this is masculine, mudhakkar. Now, how do we know that this is mudhakkar or masculine? Because there's no sign to indicate that it would be otherwise, in other words, feminine. There's no tar marbuta. And from the meaning, it's a general gender-neutral object. Kitabun is book, so we know that it can't be feminine. Because sometimes in the case of a word like bint, or bintun, a girl, even though there's no tar marbuta, it's still a feminine word. And so we treat it grammatically as feminine. But in this case, book is gender neutral. There's no tar marbuta, and it's not one. We should know that it's not one of those exception words either, which are very rare anyway. So we treat this as a masculine word grammatically. Another way that we knew this was an ism, besides the tanween, was from the meaning itself. It means a book, and we know that an ism is an object, place, or thing, and a book is a object or a thing. So we know again from there, together with the tanween, that this must be an ism. Karimun. Now we know that this means generous or noble, amongst other meanings. Probably noble would suit here better because we're referring to a book. So we should know that this is a sifa, an adjective. We looked at that last lesson. How do we know it was a sifa or an adjective? Well, first of all, it's an ism because we have the tanween. And from the meaning as well. And the meaning is the main giveaway that it's an adjective. When something is generous or noble using that word, it's obviously to describe something else. And in this case, describing a book. And the sifa, the adjective, will come after the object that it's describing, that's being described. We also know that this ism is indefinite. And it's also masculine, mudhakkar. So it's nakira, indefinite, and masculine, mudhakkar. Here's another example of a Mawsuf Sifa phrase, and I'll get into the grammar as well. We'll understand why it is shortly. But right now I'm just showing you some examples and looking at the word analysis of each word in the phrase before I get into telling you why it's actually a Mawsuf Sifa phrase. So in this verse, focusing on the last part here, Allah Ta'ala says, عَذَابٌ شَدِيدٌ. And I know in tajweed, we would, if we're stopping here on this waqf, we would say shadid, make it a sukun, sukun arid. But in grammar, when we're studying nahu, we need to pronounce the harakat in its complete way. Because it's very important what that haraka is. That's a grammatical, well, it's determined by grammatical concepts. So we need to say the whole thing, shadidun. So here, again, like the previous example, we have two indefinite nouns or two nakira nouns. They're both masculine because there's no tar marbuta and there's nothing to indicate otherwise. So we assume straight away to treat it masculine, mudhakkar. And they're both from the asma or ism category. Adabun, if you remember from last lesson, means a punishment. And why is it a punishment? Because the tanween indicated that indefiniteness, so we say a punishment instead of the punishment. The punishment would have been with an alif lam. And we would have dropped the tanween to make it al-adhabu. Here, shadidun means severe. And because it's an adjective acting as a sifa, we don't have to say severe. That wouldn't make sense. But we have a punishment and the word severe. And again, this is indefinite, masculine, like the previous example. So now to know why something is a Mawsuf Sifa phrase and how to identify it. So in the previous examples, we had, for example, we had عذاب شديد, and the one before that was كتاب كريم. So the adjective or the sifa follows the noun. So in these cases here, we have the noun, the ism in the beginning, and it's followed by an adjective. So عذاب is followed by its sifa or adjective شديد. Kitabun, the noun here, is followed by its adjective karimun. Now to make it a Mawsuf sifa phrase, it must agree with the noun, or in other words, the sifa, the adjective must agree with the noun that it follows in 4 things: definiteness, qism, gender, jins, plurality or number, adad, and declension, i'rab, or in other words, the harakah of the last letter. So let's look at these examples here. Adabun is indefinite. No alif lam, and there's a tanween. So the sifa that follows, shadidun, needs to also be indefinite, and it is in this case. There's no alif lam on shadid, and it has a tanween. So that's a tick. And same with kitabun karimun, it agrees in its definiteness. The gender, jins, needs to agree as well. If you remember, we analyzed the words. Adabun is masculine, mudhakkar. So shadidun needs to also be masculine, because remember, adjectives can take on feminine forms as well by adding a ta marbuta. Shadidun could have been shadidatun, but here we need the masculinity of the words to agree with each other. And kitabun is also masculine, and so is karimun, it follows it. The plurality, the number of the words, need to match. So in Arabic we have singular words, jul, which is 2, and plural, 3 or more. And they are written they have different structures, the way the word is written. We'll get to plurals a bit later. It's not like in English where you just add an S to the ends generally. There are actual structural changes to the word as well. So I'll tell you for now that these nouns in the beginning of the sentences, like adabun or kitabun, are singular. So adabun is for one punishment. Kitabun is for one book, a book. So that being the case, shadidun is also singular. Why? Because it has to match the number, adad, of adabun. Karimun is also in the singular form because it needs to match kitabun. And finally, declension needs to also match the harakah of the last word here. So adabun ends with a tanween dhamma, which means shadidun also needs to follow and ends with a tanween dhamma. Kitabun ends with a tanween dhamma, and there are reasons why kitabun ends with a tanween dhamma and why adabun ends with a tanween dhamma, and that was to do with the ayah itself. So whatever was before the ayah, the words before, would have determined the harakah here. And because they are tanween dhammas, the adjectives or sifa that follow need to also have the tanween dhamma, being in the same declension, so that matches. So as soon as you see 2 words together, one of them is the first one is a noun or ism, and the second one is an adjective, a describing word, and they match in these 4 things: definiteness, gender, plurality, and declension, then straight away you need to recognize that it's a Mawsuf sifa phrase. So here are some examples. Same word, but in different forms. So here we have al-baytu al-kabiru or al-baytul kabiru. So they are both definite, both masculine, both end with dhamma, both singular. Now, just take my word now that they're singular, but we should know why they're definite, masculine, and why they end with a dhamma. We should know that by now. The definiteness is from the alif lam, and it's basically the first word that determines what happens to the second word. The sifa is the one that does the following of the first word, not the other way around. The state of this word would be determined by what comes before it. So we have a dhamma here. Alif lam and alif lam matching. Both singular and both masculine, mudhakkar. Why? Because there's no indication otherwise, no tam rabuta or nothing from the meaning to indicate otherwise, and we know that they're not exception words. Here are same words, but in slightly different. Baytun, kabirun. So both indefinite because of the tanween dhamma at the end. Both masculine, both end with the dhamma. So that's another important thing, not just the tanween itself, but having the same harakah with each other. We can't have baytun and then this one kabiratan or kabiratin. It wouldn't be a Mawsuf Sifa phrase. They need to match each other. And they're both singular. One house and kabirun is the singular form of big. Here we have bayt. This should be baytan like this. It's a typo. So baytan kabiran. Now in this case, same thing, both indefinite. How do we know they're both indefinite? Because of the tanween. Regardless of which harakah it is still a tanween. Both masculine, both end with fatha. Because we have baytan, the first word ending with a fatha, a tanween now. Kabiran needs to also end with the same harakah. And they're both singular. So these three phrases are all Mawsuf Sifa phrases. And they mean, we have here the house and al-kabirun, so the big house. Baytun kabirun, a big house. Remember, these are descriptive phrases. So instead of saying just a house, we're adding a description to it. What kind of house? A big house. And here again, indefinite, so a big house. And notice they're not complete sentences. If you tell someone a big house or the big house and stop there, the person is still waiting for more information. They're going to be asking, what about the house? You know, I need more information. Which is why a Mawsuf Sifa is a phrase, not a complete sentence. It forms part of a bigger sentence. So here is a few more examples. Here are a few more examples, and here we have instead feminine words. So as-sa'atu, we know that first of all it's definite because of the alif lam, which means the sifa which follows also needs to be definite. Alif lam, and no tanween. Both feminine. We knew as-sa'atu was feminine because of the ta marbuta, in which case the sifa, the adjective that follows, needs to be in the feminine form. So not al-jadidu. Al-jadidu would have been the masculine form. But because we're describing a feminine word here, as-sa'atu, we need to have the adjective in the feminine form. Al-jadidatu. Just by adding the ta marbuta. Both end with a dhamma, so the declension needs to match, and both are singular. I need to take my word for that for now. So we have here the watch. Al-jadidatu means new. So instead of just saying the watch, we have a descriptive phrase here, so it's the new watch. Sa'atun jadidatun. Same thing here, they're matching each other in those four things. But in this case, it means a new watch. Because it's an indefinite noun that we're trying to describe. And ساعة جديدة, same meaning here, a new watch. So even if it's a tanween kasra, it's still an indefinite noun because it's the tanween that determines that. Why was it a kasra? That would have been from whatever was before this word. And we'll get to that very shortly in this lesson. What makes something take the kasra. Now, because sa'atin was forced to take the kasra due to what came before it, now that affects the adjective or sifa that follows, which now has to take a kasra as well. Now, here are some examples from the Qur'an. We have al-fawzul azimu, the great victory. So fawz, al-fawz means the victory. But instead of saying al-fawzu, which means the victory, we've turned it into a phrase, the Mawsuf Sifa phrase, that describes that victory. Azim means great. It's a sifa, an adjective. So now we're saying the great victory. How do we know this was a Mawsuf Sifa phrase? They match each other in definiteness. They match each other in gender, so both are mudhakkar. They match each other in their declension, both end with a dhamma, and both are singular. Al-fawzu is for singular form. So al-azimu matches in its singular form as well. So we know straight away this is a Mawsuf Sifa phrase. Al-yawmul akhiru, the last day. Qur'anun mubinun, a clear recitation. Rahmatun wasi'atun, a vast mercy. So here we have a feminine word, rahmatun, treated grammatically as feminine. So the sifa that matches needs to be also feminine. Now in English, we notice that the adjective comes first and then the noun. Whereas in Arabic, the noun comes first, then the adjective that's describing it. So here, rahmatun is the noun, wasi'atun is the adjective, vast. But in English, it's the other way, translated the other way around, a vast mercy. You wouldn't say a mercy vast. I mean, you might be able to say a mercy, comma, vast, depending on the way you're structuring your sentence. Or a mercy, and then you add it in here, that is vast. But that's not generally how you speak or write in English. You would say a vast mercy. So now we're going to look at how we can use the Mawsuf Sifa phrase together with something else to form a full nominal sentence. Because remember, the Mawsuf Sifa phrase is not a complete sentence, it's a phrase. That's why it's called a phrase. So it needs more information added to it to make it into a complete sentence. So one way we can do that is by adding an ism ishara to the front. So this sentence here, هذا حجر ثقيل. Now we have here an ism ishara. And if we recall from the first lesson, it's the masculine, and it means this. And then we have the second part of the sentence, the Mawsuf Sifa phrase. How do we know it was a Mawsuf Sifa? Well, it's two indefinite nouns, two nouns that end with the same haraka, the dhamma, two masculine, mudhakkar nouns, and two singular nouns, which is called mufrad, the singular. And we can see it's a noun with a describing an adjective, sifa, after it. So those are the giveaways that tell you it's a Mawsuf Sifa phrase. When you put them together, so hajar or hajarun means a rock. Thaqilun is an adjective meaning heavy. And hada obviously means this. So we can see here, if we just translated hajarun thaqilun, we get a heavy rock. So we translate this as a heavy rock, not the a, because indefinite. And if we add this, so we're getting the picture here, we're having the meaning of this is a heavy rock, and that is just falls between the two units in the sentence. So we translate this as this is a heavy rock. Now in the previous lesson we just looked at a basic form of the sentence. We would have said هذا. Whoops. We would have said هذا حجر, which means this is a rock. But now we're adding to making our sentences more elaborate by adding an adjective to that rock, or the thing that's the object in that sentence. So now we're saying هذا حجر ثقيل. This is a heavy rock. In this example, we have هذا شراب لذيذ. So again, اسم إشارة followed by موصوف صفة phrase. شراب means a drink. And if you recall, we've used لذيذ before. That means tasty or delicious. So we'd say هذا شراب لذيذ means this is a tasty drink. Here we have هذا يوم بعيد. يوم means a day. It's indefinite. بعيد means far. So you'd say this is a far day. And هذا صراط مستقيم. I know we have normally we'd have an idgham here when we pronounce in tajweed, so we'd say صراط مستقيم, but let's for Arabic purposes just focus on the haraka individually. So we هذا صراط مستقيم. Ism ishara followed by the Mawsuf Sifa phrase here. And you should be able to tell why it's a Mawsuf Sifa phrase. Siratun means a path or a way, and that should be Dhammah. Mustaqimun means straight. So this would mean this is a straight path or way. So this formula here, ism ishara plus indefinite Mawsuf Sifa phrase, is a full nominal sentence. So keep in mind that the Mawsuf Sifa phrases here are all indefinite. No alif lams, no that there's a tanween on the end. So this is very important as well. If these Mawsuf Sifa phrases were definite with the alif lam and no tanween, they would not be full nominal sentences. And we'll get to that quite later. That becomes another kind of phrase. However, when you have this order as well, ism ishara followed by an indefinite Mawsuf Sifa phrase, we get a full nominal sentence. As in these cases, this is a straight path, this is a far day, this is a tasty drink. Perfectly full nominal sentence. Now we're going to start looking at prepositions, or harf al-jar. So in this ayah here, we have an example. If we pull out this part here. So let's say normally the word balad, baladun, by default we usually put it with a dhamma. But when we have baladun with a preposition coming before it, it becomes baladin. So baladun becomes ila baladin, now taking a kasra, tanween kasra. So ila, which means to or towards, and with the harf, the huruf, we're going to see that they're very versatile in the meaning, the way that can be used, and that's actually a beneficial thing. So if you recall, the harf or huruf were particles. They're used to add meaning to sentences and join things together. They don't have any meaning by itself. They need to always have to come together with another word that it acts on. So this is an example of a harf, and in this case it's a harf jar or preposition. Harf jar or preposition. And this preposition here is coming before the word beled, and it causes this word now, beledun, to become beledin, take the kasra. So remember, beled meant land or a land. So we can have the meaning here, to or towards a land. Another example here, if we pull out from this verse here, we have normally the word ar-rasulu. So it's definite because of the alif lam, which means that it can't take the tanween. Now when we have ar-rasulu, when we have a harf jar before it, like ala, it becomes ala rasuli, takes the kasra now. We can't have ala rasula or ala rasulu. That will be incorrect grammatically. It's always going to take a kasra. So ala is a preposition or harf jar. I'll write that more clearly so we can know. Harf jar, which means on or upon. Depends how it's used in the sentence and in the context. So upon the messenger, you can say upon or on the messenger. So to sum up, when a noun follows a preposition or harf jar, so we need to know that the word preposition in Arabic is called harf jar. So it's a specific harf called harf jar, because there are different types of huruf, not just the harf jar. So we need to be specific. When we see one of these particles, for example, fi or ila in the previous example, or ala, we need to specify that these aren't just huruf, or it's not just a harf, it's a harful jar. So when a noun follows that preposition, the harful jar, it will take a kasra when it's in the singular. It'll show a different sign in the plural form, for example, but for now we're just looking at singular nouns. So for example, as-sama'u with the dhamma at the end, when there's a harf jar before, becomes fis-sama'i, and now takes a kasra, fis-sama'i, and that's a hard and fast rule. The harful jar acts only on nouns, so we can't have the harful jar, the prepositions, acting on verbs, for example, or on other particles. That's not possible. It only acts on nouns. Together they form a word construction or a phrase called jar wa majroor. Jar wa majroor. So if we think about why it's named this phrase, it's basically saying that jar, which is that particle there, wa majroor, and the word that is acting upon that, that the preposition is acting on. So we call that phrase jar wa majroor. So we've learnt two phrases so far, the Mawsuf Sifa phrase, so the noun plus the adjective. And now we've learnt another phrase, jar wa majroor, the particle plus the noun that it's acting on. And keep in mind that these are phrases, not full sentences. They can work together. You can have a sentence with a noun by itself, and then in that same sentence, a jar wa majroor and a couple of Mawsuf Sifa phrases, and they would come together to form one full sentence. So there are numerous prepositions, harful jar, in Arabic, and some are more common than others. So we should try to learn those prepositions, particularly the ones that appear in the Qur'an. However, just keep in mind that certain ones, for example, fi, which means in, ala, which means on or upon, or ila, which means to or towards, ma'a, which we'll look at shortly, which means with. So these are harful jars or prepositions that are much more common in the language than certain other ones, because they're very versatile and useful words, or their meanings. The jar wa majroor word construction is connected or muta'alliq to the khabar in a nominal sentence and the verb in the verbal sentence. So we haven't really studied this in detail yet, particularly the verb in the verbal sentence. We haven't even looked at the verbal sentence yet, but we'll get back to this when we start looking at verbs. Now, the khabar is also something we haven't looked at, the technical term. The khabar is basically the, in a sentence you have the predicate and the object, or the subject and the predicate. And the khabar is part of the nominal sentence, and if you have a jar wa majroor word construction in a sentence, in a nominal sentence, it's going to be connected to the khabar or to the predicate in the nominal sentence, and we'll get back to this a bit later. So here are the most common prepositions or huruf al-jar in the Arabic language. Ala meaning on or upon, fi meaning in, ila meaning to or towards, min meaning from. Be careful with the haraka of particularly this one here, because, and we should be careful with this with all Arabic words. So min means from, and it's a harf al-jar. It's a particle. Just one haraka change, man, so putting a fatha here. This is an ism and it means something else. So make sure we don't mix those up with each other. Particularly when we start reading unvoweled text a lot further down the track, we won't see the fatha or the kasra or the sukun, and we'll have to know from the context of the sentence whether it's min or man. We have ma'a, which means with, li, which means to or for, bi, which means in, at, by, and baina, which means amongst. Now keep in mind that some of these particles are disjointed. They're separate from the word that it acts on. So for example, we looked at ila samai. So we can see there's two separate words here, ila and as-samai. And notice that it's always going to take a kasra after. Whereas some particles, this one here and this one here, li and bi, they're actually joined to the word that it's acting on. So a common example we'll see is lillahi, which is essentially the particle or the harf al-jar li plus lafz al-jalala, the word Allah, kalimatullah. And obviously for, there's writing conventions, rules here. So when they join together, this hamzatul wasl drops off and the li attaches on. So it becomes lillahi. So again, the kasra. For example, the most common example we see with bi is bismi, bismillahir rahmanir rahim. That's actually bi, the harf al-jar bi attached to the word ism, and see it takes a kasra, bismi. So these ones are detached, ila, ma'a, baina, they're separate from the word it's acting on, whereas these two attach to the word that it's acting on. And all of these examples, lillahi, ila samai, or bismi, these make up a phrase called the jar wa majroor phrase. So here we have some examples. Now, these are actually full sentences, and I'll explain why that is shortly. But first, let's try to identify the prepositional phrases or the jar wa majroor phrases. So this one here, al-ummu ala kursiyin. This is actually, this can be broken up into two parts. We have al-ummu, and then this here is the jar wa majroor phrase, the prepositional phrase. How did I know that? Because we have a harf jar, ala, followed by a noun, kursiyin. that it's acting on. So even though they're two separate words, they're treated as one single unit in the sentence. Remember I said phrases, al-murakkibat, are treated as a single unit in a sentence, even though it's made up of two words. So later on when we start grammatically analyzing sentences, we'll first look at each word individually and analyze it. And then when it comes to phrases, we'll analyze them as one single unit. And these units, for example, this jar wa majroor phrase, these words can never be separated from each other. You can never separate ala and kursiyin in this sentence from each other. They're acting as one single unit. So the word al-ummu, what can we say about this word? First of all, it's ma'rifah or definite. And how do we know that? Because there's an alif lam at the front and no tanween. Now, even though grammatically it looks like a mudhakkar or masculine word because there's a lack of a tam marbuta, the words, so this is where you have to kind of know word meanings. Al-ummu means the mother. And because mothers are inherently female objects that we're referring to, it's treated grammatically as a feminine or mu'annath word. Okay. Now analyzing this part here, ala means, you can say on or upon. So we'll just say upon here. Kursiyin means a chair. Now why was it a chair? Because this word here, kursiyin, is indefinite or nakira. How did I know that? Because there's a tanween at the end and no alif lam. Whether that tanween is a tanween kasra or fathatain or dhammatain, it's irrelevant. In the end, it is a tanween, so it's indefinite or nakira. We can also say that the word kursiyin is masculine, mudhakkar. But in this particular case, that is kind of irrelevant when we're talking about the jar wa majroor phrase, or the harf wa jar, the preposition here. The harf wa jar, ala, doesn't have a masculine or feminine form. This is the only form you'll ever see it in. It never changes its structure or its look, and it acts both on whether the word is masculine or feminine. So in this case, there doesn't need to be a gender agreement between the two words. Ala means on or upon. It's a harf jar, or a preposition. So when we translate this, remember the is comes in between. So we would say the mother is upon a chair or on a chair. Now be careful not to add meaning to certain sentences. We can't say that with this sentence the mother is sitting on a chair, even though that's what you would naturally want to say, because the verb for sitting is actually not present in this sentence. So we need to be very clear. This sentence is trying to describe the location of the mother, not the actual acts that she's doing, which is sitting. She could be standing on the chair in this case. It's not really mentioning that. So be careful to be very strict with your translation to say the mother is upon a chair. That's it. Here we have ar-rajulu fil madrasati. So again, we can break that up into two. Ar-rajulu, the man. So it's definite, mudhakkar. It's ma'rifah, definite, and it's mudhakkar, masculine. Definite. And it's followed by a jar wa majroor phrase. Fil madrasati. Fi means in. Al madrasati means the, you can say school, I guess. Madrasa, the school, place where dars or lessons are conducted. So you would translate this as the man is in the school. So here in this case, al-madrasati, this is a feminine word, mu'annath, because there's a ta marbuta at the end. but the harf jar fi doesn't change for that. It acts on both the feminine and the masculine. And always notice in both these cases, the harf jar turned the second word, the word after it, into taking a kasra. Al-madrasa, the fi caused it to take a kasra. It actually directly, we say, caused this word to take a kasra. I think it's a good time to introduce some more terminology. So this word that comes, so I'll just clear this. So we have a harf jar. The word that comes after the harf jar, so these for example, and these ones here, they all come after the harf jar. These are called the ism majroor. So if we were to, let's pull out this example here, fi fil madrasati. So just to make things clear, this here, the fi is the harf jar, preposition. This second word, al-madrasati, is called an ism majroor. And the whole phrase, the two together, is called the jar wa majroor phrase. And grammatically, the word that comes after the harf jar is always going to have a kasra in the singular form. Now here we have al-mar'atu. Now this word is the definite or mudhakkar, ma'rifa form of the word imra'atun. So we looked before at this word here. Imra'atun, when we add that alif lam to the front to make it definite, again we have to drop this hamzat al-wasl and then the alif lam attaches on. We can't have two sukoons together, so this takes on the fatha and then this goes into a sukoon. So for that's kind of tajweed kind of rules there. But imra'atun, which means a woman, the nakira form, becomes al-mar'atu when we're talking about the woman in the ma'rifa or definite form. And it's a mu'annath or feminine word because there's a ta marbuta as well as inherently meaning a woman. Ma'ar rasuli. So ma'a was another harf jar. It means with. Ar-rasuli. So now it's forced to take the kasra because of the ma'a, because of the harf jar. This is the ism majroor, ar-rasuli. Together they form a jar wa majroor phrase, prepositional phrase, which means with the messenger. So the woman is with the messenger. And al-kitabu means the book. Ala maktabin. Ala means on or upon. Maktabin, now this means a desk. So it's not the desk. In this case, we have no alif lam and tanween. So it's indefinite nakira. And it's been forced to take the kasra haraka at the end. Now I mentioned that these were full sentences. The reason for that is because in all these cases we have a definite noun. These are all definite nouns in the beginning, followed by a prepositional phrase. So a definite noun plus a full prepositional phrase makes a full sentence. And you can see when you say, for example, the mother is on the chair, on a chair, sorry, or the man is in the school, or the woman is with the messenger, or you say the book is on a desk. There's no more information needed. That's a complete sentence. So here's an example from the Quran. If we just pull out this part here, we have ma'ar rasuli, like in the previous example. Ma'a means with, ar-rasuli, the messenger. So this is the harf jar, and this is the ism majroor. Together it makes a jar wa majroor phrase, prepositional phrase. And it means with the messenger, so it's forced to take the kasra. And I think we can analyze this word al-rasuli quite well now, the characteristics, whether it's definite or indefinite, or masculine or feminine. So here are some additional prepositions. Like I mentioned, the first table was a table showing the huruf al-jar, the prepositions that are the most commonly used in the language, particularly in the Quran. These are some more. However, they are less common. Not all of them, but most of them here are less common. In fact, some of them wouldn't even be used in the Quran. You wouldn't see it appearing in the Quran. It would appear in the language, in other books, for example. But some of them do appear in the Quran. So, for example, waw. Now, this waw is different. There's different types of uses for the letter waw, and that's the same with many of these particles. So, if you need to keep in mind that, for example, waw or hatta, they can be used in different ways. So as soon as you see hatta, don't always assume that it's a harf jar used for the meaning until. Or waw, it could be used to mean and, or it can be used as a preposition meaning by, like swearing by an oath, like wal Qur'an al Hakim, wal Fajr, wal Shams. So if you notice in those examples, was Shamsi, wal Layli, wal Qur'ani. So always the second word after the ism majroor is taking a kasra, and that's how you would know that it's a harf jar, as well as the context and meaning of the sentence. Whereas if it's joining sentences together, meaning and, like a conjunction, it wouldn't be doing the same thing of turning the next word into a kasra. So an is the one that appears in the Quran, ta, ka. And remember that some of these are attached. So ka is attached, ta is attached, whereas hatta and an, for example, are not attached to the ism majroor that it follows. So try to learn these. They're important just for your general knowledge to know the prepositions, all of them, and their general meaning. Take these meanings with a grain of salt, because they can be used in very versatile ways, and it's not necessarily the only meaning you can derive from it. But do keep in mind that every single one of these prepositions turn the following word into taking a kasra when it's in its singular form. In most cases, there's always exceptions. Obviously, as we progress in the course, we'll go through those, inshallah. So here's another example from the Quran. We have kal farashi. Now this is actually two words. We have here ka, which is a harf jar ka. So this is a preposition or a harf jar, followed by another word there, al firashi. So that's actually what this is. It's ka plus al-firashi. The hamza wasl drops off and the ka gets attached to there to say kal-firashi. So because there's a harf jar, the ism majroor, or the noun that comes after, has been forced to take a kasra. Another one here, عن أصحابي. So another حرف جر acting on an اسم مجرور and forcing it to take a kasra. Now you might notice here, and I will have to mention this so that we're clear, this doesn't have a tanween, so it's a single haraka, but there's no alif lam. So you might be thinking, is this definite ma'rifa or indefinite nakira? Now this, I'm going to talk about this a lot later when we get into another type of phrase, but because this word ashabi is actually part of another phrase here, ashabi al-jahim, this is actually a definite word, ashabi, but it's not because of an alif lam and no tanween. It's for another reason. So just leave that for now and we'll get to it later, inshallah. Just focus now that this is a, even though there's another phrase there, the phrase we're focusing on is this one here. An ashabi, which is a jar wa majroor phrase. A preposition, harf jar, followed by an ism majroor. So here's an exercise for you to do. We need to use the following nouns to make a sentence containing a prepositional phrase or a harf jar. So these words here, al-ardu, qaryatun, al-baladu. Use these words to make a complete sentence with a prepositional phrase in that sentence. So pause the video now, have a go, and then check your answers against mine. So let's start with the first one. Now what I'm going to do is, because generally, and not always, but in the sentences that we're going to construct, we're going to put the prepositional phrase towards the end of the sentence. So I'm going to put here, first of all, al-ard. Now notice I didn't put the haraka at the end, because that's obviously going to change when I add the preposition, the harf jar. So first of all, al-ard means the earth or the ground. So there's two meanings for ard. You can say earth, but I think in this case, ground would be more useful. Now when it comes to grounds, the preposition that you use in terms of meaning, probably best to say ala. Because if someone's going to say, for example, a person or a thing or an object is on the ground, you would say ala, on. Now obviously because this is Hamza, so we need to take the fatha off here. And al-ard takes the kasra, single kasra, because it's a definite word. We can't add a tanween when there's a alif lam. So ala al-ardi, which means on the ground. Now we have to work in backwards here. What would I have on the ground? I can say anything. I could say al-waladu ala al-ardi, the boy is on the ground. Let's say sitting. I can say ar-rajulu, the man is on the ground. Or any, besides a person, I can say an object as well. So for example, I can say al-kuratu ala al-ardi, the ball is on the ground. Or any word of your choice. So I'll just put anything here. For example, al-waladu. But the important thing to note here is that the word that I put here needs to have an alif lam, because it needs to be ma'rifa, definite. Can't have waladun ala al-ardi. Now, obviously, if we do want to say a boy, not the boy, is on the ground, we want to be using an indefinite, I would do something else to this sentence. But if I'm putting here the noun in the beginning of the sentence, I would have to say al-waladu, the boy is on the ground. Qaryatun, so let's say I want to say the man is in the village. These are all words that we've used. So I'd say الرجل في قرية, and this takes a تنوين كسرة, قرية, في قرية. الرجل في قرية, the man is in a village. And this is a jar wa majrur phrase. It's forced to take a kasra. Fi means in, ala means upon. Al-baladu meaning the land. So I can say, again, I would probably use fi fil baladi. So in the land, ala al-baladi, upon or on the land. Probably wouldn't use ma'a al-baladi, with the land. But you can add anything you want here as long as it's an indefinite noun. As long as it's a definite noun, ma'rifah. So alif lam, and then whatever. And the meaning makes sense, obviously. So that brings us to the end of this part of the lecture. Revise this section, look at your notes, and make some notes, and then look at how you went with the exercises, learn some of the vocabulary, and then move on to the second part of this lecture, inshallah.